Okay, so the second part, now this is the second part of that lab. Now you need to download the zip that I have uploaded, inherit completed, and extract it desktop and open it. So in the lab part one, we have completed this inheritance with the class of bank account and the savings account. Now in the lab number 11, so lab 10 is completed. So which is about arrays that we couldn't do because of that situation. So I'm going to create an array now to hold the details of record inner classes and the rider class. So let's start with the simple step. Let's close this one. We don't need it. Open the rider UI. Now we have two things, right? One is adding the rider details and another one is adding the record details. You can see rider details and the record details are added. So that's the code. This is the code we have added. But the only downside is this can only add what? This can only add one object. Single object can be added only. So we can't add multiple objects. So in order to do that, we can create an, rather than creating a rider object, we can create an rider object array. So we can create an array. I can say start with the now first question is says about create an array to hold details of record in a class. So record is actually only one single object. Now we don't want to create a one single object. We are going to create an array. So in order to do that, I'm going to say rider dot record. So we are going to create a square bracket. So that is to indicate this is an array. You can say record list. So this is to store the records. Now initially this array should contain some size. Otherwise it is not. Now here we can't say using the method number one saying several values because this is a dynamic one because user set one by one. In that case we can't create the array at the same time. So first of all we have to set some kind of size. Let's say record size is 100. We can store 100 records in this array. So 100 record details in this array. And this is not enough. We want to keep an index where the current ride is stored. So in that case, I'm going to create an index variable to store the index of this rider and the records. I can say index initially 0. Now when you add a new rider or the record, this index should be incremented. This index should be incremented. So that is the basic logic behind it. Now if I want to use instead of an object, we have to use an array. What we can do is this object, we can now store it inside our index. So we can say this is our record list. So this is my index that we are going to store. Initially 0th index, then it will be incremented to first index, second index until the 100 index has been filled. So then we can say this object, we are going to store it inside that. Very simple step. Now, sorry, not the rider. We are going to add this into the record class. So I'm going to store it inside the record list, which is object record. Now you can see each time when you add a new rider, this will be adding a new rider, and we can print how many riders we have added using this index count. So you can see I just create a new record array. So this is an array symbol, record list. Initially I can store 100 values, initially 0. So once you create an object of rider and record, this object of the record will be added to the array list and increment the. So when you create the button again, the index will be 2, 3, 4, likewise it will be incremented. So you can run it and see what will happen. So when you right click and run that file, so we can add some random rider and a age, weight, and height, and add rider. So add better. So yeah, you can see we can add until 100, 3, 4 rider, 5 rider. These are the record of that rider. So now earlier we can only store one object because it is only single object we have created. Now since we have created an array, this record list array contain all the details of an rider. So if I search rider by name and click search, we should be able to see the details of that rider. So the number one part in this lab has been complete. So add a rider and store it inside that section. So here in the second section, it says modify the code segment in add rider button to use the array list in step number one. In step number one, I'm going to use this is actually the arrays. Now we are going to use this add rider button, and I'm going to say instead of an array, you have to create what? Use an array list. So here we have created only arrays. Now we have to use an array list to store this object rider in this case. So if I want to create an array list, now this is an record list. Now we want to create an array list. For that, I'm going to import that java.util.array list. This is how you use an array list in our project. So I'm going to create an array list of rider. Now we have a array list for the, so this is an array for the records. Now we miss something for the rider because riders only one object can be created. So here I'm going to say rider list. So this is an array list. So I can create a new array list equal new array list. And here initially you can put a size if you want, but the difference is once the record number 100 is completed, this you can't no longer add any details. But this one, it will automatically increase 101, 102. Likewise, it can increase it automatically. That is the advantage compared to a array. Now, unlike the early example, we don't need to create an index separately because it will automatically able to track the index using that method. Now, since we have the rider list, we have object. We can now say rider list dot add rider. The object we have created can be declared. Now, when we add it, you can see you can add both rider details and record details until hundreds. But after that, the record details are filled because the array list can only store 100 details. So, but the array list can grow 101, 102, likewise unlimited numbers because this is an array list. So that is that answer for the lab array exercise number 2. So in the third one, I want to write a, now this BMI printing index can be done. We have written that UI interfaces, and we are going to design the UI for the logins. So we will be logging the user interface today as well. But we are going to complete the third exercise. So that will be saying that write a code segment for search button to use an array list and search the display the rider's information to the outside. So when I click just search button, nothing will happen because the array list we just created. Now, if you see the rider class, there's a method that we have written about the toString method. I forgot to print the details. Yeah, the rider class doesn't have a method to generate that rider class details. So we can write a toString method to print the rider details to the outside. You can right click and click insert code and generate this toString method to print the details of the rider. See? Now we can write these details to the outside as well, right? toString method to print the details of the rider, and we can display them inside that our method. So what we can do is, this is my rider UI. So we have to get the variable name, that is txt search rider. Now when I double click on the search button, what I should take is, first of all, I want to take the name of that things that I have typed. I can say search text things. I just, right, whatever the things I type, I should take into a variable. So I can say txt search rider dot get text. So that has been taken. So once you take the search text, so we have that search text. So then what we need to do is we're going to look for this rider list, whether that search text is available in our rider list. So for that we can use an enhanced for loop. Now we can see that all things that we discussed in the lecture can be applied in the practical. Now since this is a rider list, we can create the rider data type. I can say r colon, and this is our rider list, and print it inside our list. So we can write a if condition to check whether this rider dot we going to get this r dot. Now I forget to get this name concatenate to the outside as public methods, so we can just generate getters and setters for this method because these are not public. So you can make it public and get the details, but the best approach is not setting them public. That is not a good practice, but right click can generate getters and setters. Now these information should be taken into the outside, and but I need to encapsulate the fields because they will become private, because otherwise they can directly controllable in my project. So that should not be allowed. So I'm going to generate it. So it will take some time to generate this method. I'm going to say r dot. So now we have the rider. So I'm going to check the rider's name, and I'm going to check whether it is contain our search text. If it is containing, I'm going to print the details in our J option panel. So I can just copy this one of the J option panel. I can say info. So here we can say r dot. We can say toString method that will be directly printed. So that toString method is actually what we generated now. We are printing the name, country, and age. So that's it. So when you run this rider UI, you will be able to see Kasun. When I click at rider. So we put two riders at together. Kasun. You don't have to say like Kasun, and if I say search button, you can see the name, country, and the details are printed. But the problem is if I type an incorrect version, still it is going to print. See, nothing will happen. So what we have to do is, if it is not found, we going to say rider not found. So what we do is, once you found out, we exit this method. I can say return. Don't return any values, just return. So this can be done, right? Since it is void, you can't return a value, but return function, the keyword can be done. So that means this will exit this method. So after this like exit, then it is fine. But if it is not found, we can just say a message like this: rider not found. So the rider not found. So now look at the behavior. So when I run this file, so if I add a random rider and a country, if I have a rider which is not in there, it says rider not found. But if I type something which is similar to that ID, you see the rider details are providing to this tree. So that is how you can search something in our function. So we have the list, we have it there, we have the rider, we have it there, and we can search it. So that is the part of number 3, search button. Now the BMI printing, I think we have done that the methods in our recording, right? So just call the method calculate BMI. It has been called. The last part of this UI interface is we have to design this username, login, and the password, and some username and the password with the rider and the bicycle buttons. So we are going to use it another UI. I'm going to create a new jpanel from. So we can say login UI. So when I create a login UI, you always know that you have to add a panel. So we are going to hard code random user. Now the logic we are not going to do it today because we are going to complete it in another week. We just design the UI and click on the button and it will be going there. So we need to have a button to go to the login. So then we need to have a label for the username. So this is a text box. Then we need to have another text box for the password. So usually the password field is actually a separate one. It's not a normal text area. So we have password one. So currently we are not going to do anything. Just show an interface when I click on a button. So that is what we are going to do it. So if I want to show some interface, so let's design another one as let's say main UI, main interface. So here also I'm going to add a panel that will display all the sync containers, right? Where we designed so far. So far we have designed 3 buttons. One is for the bicycle UI. Another one is for the rider UI. Other one is for the savings account UI. So when someone click on these buttons, they should go to that separate UIs. So how to do that? Let's start with it. Let's start with a simple case. So if I double click on the bicycle UI button, what we need to do is double click on it. What we need to do is we need to show that bicycle UI. So I'm going to create an object from this and just type BICY bicycle UI. So this is the bicycle UI. Select that and create a UI object from this. Just like the same thing that we have done. So creating object from that class, and you can say UI dot set visible. You can say true. And you want to hide this UI, you can say this dot set visible false. So otherwise the current window also going to be shown. So that is what we are going to do. The current the bicycle UI we are going to set visible true, but this UI set visible false. So let's try to run it. So when I click on the bicycle UI, it will be showing, but the current window will be hidden. So likewise, I'm going to copy this UI code for the rider UI as well. Now this time it is not a bicycle, it's a rider UI. This time it is the rider UI. Other codes are same. Now when I run it, you can right click and run this code. So the rider UI will be displayed, current will be hidden. So if I don't want to hide it, you can set visible into true. So the last one is our savings account UI. Can copy this as well, paste it. This time is actually savings UI. So that will be savings UI, not just visible true. So now when I run it, that will be savings account UI will be open. So now we have a kind of a meaningful design now. Earlier we just have random UIs that connected together. Now we can start to make it a meaningful manner. Now last week what we are going to do is we connect to the database server and add some data. But the login button we are not going to code it today. We are going to do it on the tomorrow's like the lab sessions. So username and the password. Now currently we are just double click on the login button and we copy the same code that we did in the main UI, because we need to open the main UI instead of the any other things. But this should be validated, right? If the username and the password is correct only. But how do we do that? We are going to do it on campus tomorrow. So the rider UI is we created it. Instead of rider UI, we are going to say main UI. And I'm going to open the main UI, set visible true. So now the disadvantage is the whatever the username password you put here, regardless of that, now you can see the password is not typing, it will be directly going to the login UI. So from that you can select whatever the UI you want to have it. So if you follow the series from the beginning, we started very simple packages. We added some packages and utilities and dependencies. Now next week, tomorrow's lectures, we are going to add some dependencies as well for our project. So you can use it in your project. So that is that end of this lab that we have done it. So this is the part number 2. So tomorrow we are going to design another one from the same thing we have completed. So I will be uploading this recording and completed the part also I will be uploading. So make sure you try to do it and upload in this love and live analysis. Right, so that will be now. Thank you very much.